The hallway goes quiet before the alarms do. Security grips her arm, guiding her toward the exit, voices tight with authority she does not challenge. A charge nurse avoids her eyes. A clipboard is thrust forward. Policy: clear the floor. Down the corridor, the ICU doors shudder as something inside the hospital turns unstable. Phones begin to ring. One is answered, then another. She sets her bag down gently, not to argue, not to plead. Outside the glass, senior staff debate liability while the monitors spike and fall in uneven rhythm. Somewhere far away, a line connects that was never meant to be used. When the call ends, the room feels smaller. They were wrong about why she was here. The hospital looked different at night, not quieter, just thinner. Sounds traveled farther. Every footstep had weight. She entered through the staff door at 22:41, badge clipped, jacket folded over her arm. No rush, no hesitation. The security guard glanced at her ID longer than necessary, then waved her through without comment. Temporary staff always drew a second look. She was used to that. The nurses' station on the 4th floor buzzed with low, tired energy. Coffee cups, half-finished charts. A television murmured to itself in the corner. When she approached, conversation dipped not out of hostility but calculation. "Float?" the charge nurse asked without looking up. "Yes." A clipboard slid across the counter toward her. No welcome, no orientation beyond a quick gesture down the hall. ICU overflow. Rooms 12 through 16. "We're short tonight, so stay in your lane. Anything complicated, call it up." She nodded once, signed her name cleanly. No questions. Someone nearby muttered, another agency nurse, not quietly enough to be accidental. She didn't react. She never did. The ICU wing smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. Machines blinked steadily, the rhythm of controlled survival. She moved room to room, checking monitors, reading faces, noting small things others missed, not dramatically, just carefully. A subtle tremor in a patient's hand, a ventilator cycling half a beat late. A bag hung slightly too low. She hasn't adjusted anything yet. First, she observed. In room 14, a middle-aged man stirred against sedation, heart rate climbing, oxygen saturation dipping just enough to matter. She watched for a full minute, counting breaths in her head. When she reached for the chart, the resident on call appeared in the doorway. "Who are you?" he asked, covering overflow. He scanned the monitor. "He's fine." "Not yet," she said quietly. The resident frowned, then waved a hand. "I'll be back." She made the adjustment after he left. Minimal, precise. The monitor settled. At the nurse's station, administrative voices drifted from behind a closed office door. Words like liability and compliance slipped through the seams. She didn't listen intentionally, but she heard them anyway. Her pager vibrated once, then again 5 minutes later. Both times routine alerts, nothing urgent. That, she noted, was unusual. Near midnight, a transport orderly rushed past, breath shallow, eyes wide. "Security's locking stairwell C," he said to no one in particular. "Why?" someone asked. He shook his head. "Don't know. Orders." She looked down the hall toward the stairwell. 2 guards now stood there, radios crackling softly. One had his hand near his belt, not because there was danger yet, but because someone had told him to be ready. She returned to her patients. At 0:17, the alarms began, not loud, not all at once, just enough to register as wrong. A cascade, not a spike. She traced it mentally as she moved, one monitor destabilizing, then another, then a third in the same wing. Pattern, not coincidence. She called it in. Calm, specific, used the language administrators preferred. The response came back delayed, dismissive, engineering's aware. She paused, holding the receiver a second longer after the line went dead. Then she replaced it carefully. Down the hall, the charge nurse argued with someone on the phone. Voices rose, words sharpened. When the call ended, the charge nurse looked straight at her for the first time that night. "They want you off the floor," she said. "Credential issue. Nothing personal." "Not now," she replied. The charge nurse hesitated. "Security's already on their way." She nodded once. No protest, no defense. In room 16, a patient's monitor skipped, then recovered. She adjusted his four, smoothed the sheet, and stepped back just as the doors at the end of the hall opened. 2 security officers entered, purposeful, uncertain. She washed her hands slowly, dried them, picked up her bag. Outside, something in the building shifted. Not yet a crisis, not yet a disaster. Just the sense that the wrong person was being sent away, and that the hospital was about to find out why that mattered. Security walked her as far as the administrative corridor, then stopped, not because they were told to, but because they didn't quite know what to do next. "Wait here," one of them said, already turning away. She set her bag down by the wall and stood where they left her. Hands relaxed at her sides. No visible irritation, just patience. The corridor smelled different from the ward. Paper, carpet cleaner, faint perfume. Offices lined the walls, most dark, a few lit with the blue glow of monitors and the quiet anxiety of late-night decision-making. Through one open door, she could see a risk manager flipping through forms with unnecessary force. Minutes passed. On the other side of the wall, the ICU alarms continued, muted here but audible. She counted the intervals between tones. They were shortening. A junior administrator finally emerged, tablet in hand. He didn't introduce himself. "There's a discrepancy with your assignment," he said. "Your credentialing doesn't clear you for ICU oversight in an active incident." "There was no active incident when I arrived," she replied. He nodded quickly, as if agreement might end the conversation. "That's not the issue." She watched his eyes flick to the tablet, then back to her. He was reading policy, not the situation. "I can work under supervision," she said. "I already am. That's not approved." "Who made the call?" He hesitated. It came from above the floor. She understood what that meant. Liability moving faster than facts. Behind him a phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. She waited. "Please sign here," he said, holding out the tablet. Acknowledgement of removal. She read the screen. Every word. Her name was misspelled. The reason for removal was vague enough to protect everyone except the person being removed. She signed anyway. As the administrator turned away, a nurse hurried down the corridor toward them, face flushed. "Room 14 stabilized," the nurse said, breathless. "Whatever adjustment you made—" The administrator cut her off. "She's no longer assigned." The nurse stopped short, looked from him to her. Confusion settled in. "Who did it then?" the nurse asked. No one answered. The nurse returned to the ward without another word. She picked up her bag again. Still no rush, still listening. In the ICU, the pattern continued. One patient compensated. Another followed. The system was holding for now, but it was holding on the margins. She stepped closer to the office door she'd passed earlier. Inside, 2 senior administrators spoke in low voices. "Engineering says it's contained. It's never contained. We just need to get through the night." She moved away before they noticed her. At the end of the corridor, a glass window overlooked the ambulance bay. One vehicle idled longer than usual. Its crew stayed inside, waiting. Her pager vibrated again. This time the alert wasn't routine, a system-level notice. Restricted distribution. She checked the code. Memorize it. Deleted the message. One of the security officers returned, uncomfortable now. "They want you to wait downstairs," he said. "Lobby." "After I finish something," she replied. He blinked. "You're not cleared." She met his eyes, not challenging, just steady. "I won't touch a patient," she said. "I'll make a phone call." He considered the hallway, the offices, the ringing phones. Then he nodded once and stepped aside. She used the wall phone near the stairwell, dialed a number she had not used in years, one that did not appear in any hospital directory. When the line connected, she spoke briefly. No titles, no explanations, just facts delivered cleanly. There was a pause on the other end, longer than before. "Understood," the voice said. "Stay where you are." She hung up. Back in the ICU, a monitor alarm spiked sharply, then flatlined for half a second too long. Staff rushed. Orders overlapped. Someone shouted for a supervisor. The phone in the administrative office rang again. This time, it was answered. She leaned against the wall, bag at her feet, eyes closed for just a moment. Paperwork and protocol were doing what they always did, clearing space. The question was what would fill it. The first true alert did not come from a monitor. It came from the building itself. A low vibration traveled through the floor, subtle enough that no one named it, but strong enough that she felt it in her feet. Not an impact, not an explosion, something mechanical, out of sequence. She straightened and listened. Overhead, the ventilation shifted tone, a faint whine layered beneath the usual hum. In the ICU, the alarms began to overlap, no longer isolated, now speaking to one another in short, urgent bursts. At the nurse's station, someone said, "That's weird." No one answered. She moved without asking permission, stepping back into the wing as if she had never been removed. No one stopped her. Not because she was allowed, but because no one was certain she wasn't. Room 12. Blood pressure trending down, slow but steady. Room 13. Oxygen saturation dipping in waves, not tied to patient movement. Room 14 held, but only because of earlier adjustments. The pattern was widening. She checked the wall panel outside the rooms. Environmental readouts scrolled past. Temperature stable, humidity normal, airflow lagging by a fraction of a second. Not enough to trigger an automated shutdown, enough to matter. "Engineering?" she asked a passing tech. "They're on it," he said. "Some kind of override glitch." "Where?" He shrugged. "Sub-basement, I think." She nodded and moved on. At the station, the charge nurse was on the phone again, voice tight. "No, I'm telling you, it's not isolated, it's the whole wing." A doctor leaned over a chart, tapping a pen too hard. "We're overreacting." She stepped in beside him, eyes on the screen. "You're compensating for the wrong variable," she said. He looked at her, irritation flashing. "And you are?" "Not your problem," she replied. "But if you increase pressure now, you'll crash him in 6 minutes." The doctor hesitated. 6 minutes was specific enough to be unsettling. He didn't change the settings. She did not argue. She moved to the next room and adjusted what she could within the limits of her access. Small corrections, nothing dramatic. The alarms quieted, but they did not stop. In the corridor, 2 security officers reappeared, radios alive with clipped voices. "Lockdown stairwell C and D," one said. "Pending." "Pending what?" the other asked. No answer came back. A hospital-wide announcement chimed overhead, carefully worded, deliberately vague. "Out of an abundance of caution, temporary restrictions. Please remain in your assigned areas." The staff exchanged looks. Fear did not arrive all at once. It crept in, slow and professional, disguised as concern. She returned to the nurse's station and picked up the phone herself. "I need a live engineer," she said when the operator answered. There was a pause. "They're in a meeting." Then interrupted. Silence, then, "I can't." She hung up. On a nearby screen, a patient's waveform jittered, then stabilized. Another followed. A third did not. "Crash cart!" someone shouted. She was already there, hand steady, voice low, directing without raising it. She did not take over. She guided me. A suggestion here, a correction there. The team moved with her, not realizing why. The patient stabilized, barely. In the administrative corridor, a door opened. The same junior administrator from earlier stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, face pale. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I understand. She's still here." He spotted her down the hall and froze. She met his gaze, said nothing. His phone buzzed again. He answered immediately this time. Outside, the idling ambulance shut off its engine. Inside, the alarms did not stop, but they changed. Slower now, heavier, as if the hospital were holding its breath. She checked her pager. No new messages. That, she realized, was worse. Whatever was coming next was not routine. It was being decided somewhere else. The order came down without urgency, which made it worse. 2 security supervisors arrived together this time. Not patrol officers, management. Their uniforms were pressed, their radios quiet. They did not look at the monitors. They looked only at her. "Ma'am," the taller one said, voice careful, "we need you to step away from the unit." The charge nurse turned. "Now?" she asked. "We're in the middle of—" "This is administrative," the supervisor said, "not clinical." She finished adjusting the drip before answering. When she turned, she faced them fully. "Who authorized it?" she asked. The shorter supervisor cleared his throat. "Hospital leadership." "Names," she said. A pause, not defiance, confusion. They hadn't expected a follow-up. "That's not information we're given." She nodded once. "Then you're acting without full context." The taller one stiffened slightly. "We're acting on orders." Around them, staff slowed, pretending not to watch. The ICU had that effect during moments like this. Everything visible, nothing acknowledged. A doctor stepped forward. "If she leaves, I lose coverage on 3 unstable patients." "That's not our concern," the supervisor replied. She picked up her bag. "I'll walk," she said. No resistance, no argument. As they moved down the corridor, alarms spiked behind them. Not catastrophically, just enough to remind everyone what was being abandoned. At the stairwell, the supervisor swiped his badge. The door did not open. He tried again. The radio on his shoulder crackled. "Hold position," a voice said. "Do not escort off site yet." He looked at her, unsettled now. "We were told—" "I know," she said. They stood there, the 3 of them, while the building made its own decisions. Down the hall, a patient shouted in confusion. A nurse called for assistance. Someone cursed under their breath. The supervisor's phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer it, lowering his voice instinctively. Yes, she's here. No, she's cooperative. I understand." He returned, face tight. "We're relocating you," he said. "Administrative holding." "Why?" she asked. "Because we were advised to keep you available." "Available for what?" He didn't answer. They turned back toward the administrative corridor. As they walked, doors along the wing began to close automatically, one by one. Not a full lockdown, something partial. Containment without commitment. "Who initiated that?" the shorter supervisor asked into his radio. No immediate response. They reached the glass-walled conference room used for late-night reviews. Inside, 3 administrators sat around a table cluttered with files and laptops. A 4th stood by the window, phone to his ear, nodding repeatedly. The room fell silent when she entered. "She's here," the standing administrator said into the phone. Yes, right now." He ended the call and turned to her. "There's been a change," he said. "We need you to wait." "For how long?" she asked. He swallowed. "Until further notice." One of the seated administrators finally spoke. "You should understand this isn't personal. This is about risk exposure." "Risk to whom?" she asked. No one answered. Outside the room, a hospital-wide alert tone sounded again, this one lower, more serious, the kind used sparingly. The standing administrator's phone rang immediately. He answered on the first vibration. "Yes, understood. Will comply." He hung up and looked at the others. "Engineering reports they've lost manual control of the airflow system in the ICU wing," he said. "They're trying to reroute." "How long?" someone asked. "Unknown." All eyes shifted to her. Not accusatory, not trusting. Searching. She spoke carefully. If the airflow stabilizes unevenly, you'll see delayed respiratory failure in patients who look fine right now. One administrator scoffed, weakly. That's speculative. It's predictable, she replied. The room went quiet. The standing administrator's phone buzzed again. This time he didn't answer immediately. He looked at the screen, then at her, then back at the screen. Who is calling? One of the others asked. He didn't respond. He stepped out into the hall to take it. Through the glass she watched his posture change, shoulders straightening, one hand unconsciously dropping to his side, as if at attention. When he returned, his face had lost its color. We're to keep her here, he said slowly. No further attempts to remove her from the building. Why? Someone demanded. He hesitated, then shook his head. They didn't say. Outside, the ICU alarms continued their uneven chorus. Inside the room, no one spoke. She sat down, placed her bag at her feet, and waited. The lockdown did not announce itself. There was no siren, no red lights. Just a series of soft clicks that traveled through the ICU wing like a closing thought. Doors sealed. Elevators bypassed the floor. Access badges blinked red where they had been green seconds before. Containment, not panic. In the conference room, an administrator checked his tablet and frowned. We didn't authorize a full isolation. A voice came through the speakerphone on the table, thin with delay. Its partial, automated response. To what? Someone asked. No answer came back. She stood before they finished arguing. No permission, no challenge. If the wing is sealed, she said, your staff will try to manage alone. They're already stretched. We can't let you back in, the risk manager said quickly. That would be... She met his eyes. I won't take command. I won't issue orders. I'll advise if asked. That's still involved. Then you're choosing paperwork over patients. The words landed without force. Not accusation. Just a fact. Silence followed. In the hallway beyond the glass, a nurse tried her badge against the ICU door. It failed. She slapped it again, harder this time. Her radio crackled. Airflow's fluctuating, a voice said. Negative pressures not holding. Another voice, sharper. We're losing room 16. The administrator nearest the door stood. We need more hands. The risk manager opened his mouth, then closed it again. No one looked at her. Not yet. The nurse outside the ICU door turned and saw her through the glass. Recognition flickered, relief mixed with uncertainty. Can you help? The nurse mouthed. She did not move. She waited. The standing administrator exhaled slowly. Unlock the door, he said. The risk manager snapped his head around. You can't. I said unlock it. A key card beeped. The door slid open. She stepped through without a word. The ICU felt tighter now, air heavier. Staff clustered at stations, voices overlapping, each problem competing for attention. Someone had started to panic, quietly, professionally, but panic all the same. She moved into the flow, not the center. At room 16, the patient's breathing was shallow, uneven. The respiratory therapist shook his head. Vents not responding, he said. Pressure's all over the place. Don't increase it, she said. He looked at her. Who are you? Not your supervisor. She pointed at the monitor. Watch the delay. The system's lagging. If you force it, you'll collapse the alveoli. He hesitated. Then he waited. The patient's chest rose, steadied. Across the hall, a nurse called out, We're out of portable oxygen. She turned. You have 2 tanks in storage by the old supply room. One's empty, one isn't. How do you know that? She was already moving. At the nurse's station, the charge nurse watched her work, eyes narrowing, not with suspicion, but with recalibration. You've done this before, the charge nurse said. She didn't answer. A doctor approached, frustration edging his voice. We need clear authority. This is chaos. She looked at him. Then give them something steady to follow. That's not an answer. It's the only one that works. The airflow shifted again. Lights dimmed, then returned. A patient cried out in confusion. Another's heart rate spiked. She moved from room to room, offering restraint instead of action. Wait. Not yet. Now. Each decision cost something. Time. Trust. A nurse snapped at her. A doctor ignored her once, and paid for it with a near miss that shook him into silence. No violence, no heroics. Just control bought inch by inch. In the administrative corridor, phones rang unanswered. Back in the ICU, the charge nurse finally spoke loud enough for the room to hear. Do what she says. The words hung there. Dangerous. She turned to the charge nurse. No, she said quietly. Do what makes sense. I'm just watching. The charge nurse nodded, understanding the boundary. A security officer appeared at the door, eyes wide. We've got armed response units staging outside. Why? Someone asked. He shook his head. They didn't tell us. Her pager vibrated. One message. Stand by. She closed her eyes for half a second. The wing was locked. The crisis was contained, but barely, and whatever had triggered this was no longer just a hospital problem. The call did not come to her. It came to the hospital. Every phone in the administrative corridor rang within the same second, not the shrill, overlapping noise of panic, but a synchronized alert, clean and unmistakable. Priority lines, restricted access. In the ICU, no one heard it. They were too busy keeping people alive. In the conference room, the standing administrator answered on the first ring. Yes, he said, already on his feet. He listened. His face drained as the voice on the other end spoke without raising itself. No explanations, no threats, just instruction. Yes, sir, he said finally. Understood. He ended the call and looked at the others. For a moment, no one asked the question they all wanted answered. Then the risk manager whispered it. Who was that? The administrator didn't sit down. We've been given temporary operational guidance. From where? He hesitated. Just long enough to matter. Federal level. That word shifted the room, not louder, heavier. Another phone rang, then another. Different lines, same pattern. Each call is shorter than the last. Do not interfere with the individual currently assisting ICU staff. Ensure unrestricted movement within the facility. Maintain discretion. The instructions were precise, narrow, unmistakable. One administrator laughed once, sharp and nervous. This doesn't make sense. The standing administrator turned to him. It doesn't have to. Down the hall, a security supervisor received the same message. His posture changed immediately. Radio discipline snapped into place. All units, he said quietly, stand down. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. What about the lockdown? Someone asked. Maintain a perimeter. Do not restrict internal movement. By whose authority? A pause. Above ours. In the ICU, she felt the shift before anyone told her. Not relief. Alignment. The background resistance, the subtle friction that slowed decisions, delayed approvals, second-guessed every move, fell away. Doors opened where they had not before. Supplies arrived without argument. A respiratory therapist nodded at her once, then adjusted his workflow without being asked. The charge nurse approached, voice low. Administration says you have clearance. For what? She asked. The charge nurse swallowed. For everything. She shook her head slightly. No, she said. I don't. But they said to stop interfering, she replied. That's not the same thing. The charge nurse studied her, then nodded. A senior physician entered the wing, flanked by two security officers who stayed at the door. His confidence faltered when he saw the controlled chaos. What's the status? He demanded. The charge nurse answered before anyone else could. Clear, calm, accurate. The physician turned to her. And you are? She met his gaze. Temporary. He opened his mouth to push back. Then his phone rang. He answered, listened. Yes. Yes, I see. Understood. When he ended the call, he did not look at her again. He addressed the room instead. Continue as you are. That was all. In room 16, the patient stabilized enough to breathe without assistance for 10 seconds at a time. Not recovery. Progress. She watched the monitor, then stepped back. A nurse beside her whispered, "What did you do?" "Nothing," she said. Outside the ICU, black vehicles arrived without sirens. No markings, no urgency. They parked and waited. Inside, the crisis continued, but now it had a ceiling, a boundary drawn somewhere far above the hospital's roof. Her pager vibrated again. "You're covered. Finish the job. Leave no trace." She deleted the message. There was still work to do, and a cost yet to be paid. With interference gone, the problem revealed its true shape. Not sabotage, not an attack, a cascade failure, one system compensating for another until the margins disappeared. She moved to the wall console near the central nursing station and studied the environmental feed. Engineering had rerouted airflow through auxiliary ducts never meant to support ICU load. It kept the numbers acceptable, but it introduced delays, seconds that stacked into minutes. "Stop chasing the alarms," she told the charge nurse. "They're behind reality now." The charge nurse hesitated. "Then what do we follow?" She tapped the screen lightly. Patient response. Always patient response. Word spread without announcement. Nurses adjusted posture, attention shifting from monitors to breathing, color, rhythm. The room grew quieter, not calmer, but more focused. A respiratory therapist approached, voice tight. "Engineering wants us to increase pressure wing-wide." She shook her head. "Not yet. They say it's the only way to stabilize. It's the fastest way to break something you can't fix," she replied. He frowned. "What if you're wrong?" "Then you'll have a spike," she said. "If they're wrong, you'll have funerals." He walked away without another word. Minutes passed. The alarms spiked, then settled. A nurse exhaled shakily. The containment held. In room 13, an elderly woman began to desaturate despite stable airflow. The doctor on duty prepared to intubate. "Wait," she said. The doctor bristled. "We don't have time. You have 30 seconds, she said. "And if I'm wrong, I'll step out and not come back." The room stilled. She adjusted the bed angle by degrees, not inches. Changed nothing else. I watched the woman's chest rise. Oxygen levels climbed, slowly, reluctantly. The doctor stared at the monitor, then at her. "How did you know?" "I didn't," she said. "I noticed. Elsewhere the cost surfaced." A nurse collapsed into a chair, shaking, overwhelmed by the sustained pressure. She guided another nurse away from a patient who had coded twice and was not coming back. "We did everything," the nurse whispered. She nodded. "I know." There was no comfort in the words, just acknowledgement. Security reported movement outside, media vans circling, lights kept low, curious but uninformed. Orders came down to keep them out, no statements, no leaks. Inside the ICU, supplies ran thin. She rationed without announcing it. One tank here, one dose was delayed there. Every decision is a small theft from the future. A junior doctor finally snapped. "Who put you in charge?" She looked at him. "No one. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one." He turned away, angry, and then followed her next instruction anyway. Near the end of the shift, the airflow stabilized for longer stretches. Engineering regained partial manual control. The worst of the cascade slowed, not ended. She leaned against the counter for the first time that night, fatigue settling into her shoulders. It would last weeks. She accepted that. Her pager buzzed again. Prepare for handoff. She exhaled slowly. Containment meant survival, not victory. And survival always left something behind. The ICU wing was quiet now, but only by comparison. Alarms had stopped screaming, but the subtle pulse of monitors reminded everyone that nothing was completely safe. She stood at the center of the floor, watching the staff move with tentative precision. Every nurse, every doctor, every respiratory tech. exhaust written on their faces, looked at her, even if they did not realize it. Then the order came down: evacuate one of the patients in room 15. A high-risk transfer. The patient was stable, just barely, but the movement carried a real danger of collapse. The administrators, back in their offices, demanded it anyway. They had paperwork, liability, and protocol. She had the patients. She closed her eyes for a moment. The choice was simple, but it would cost her something: obey the evacuation order, save herself from confrontation, and risk the patient, or refuse, risk administration interference, and possibly trigger retaliation. Her hand hovered over the patient's charts. She thought of the room's rhythm, the breathing, the alarms that had whispered warning earlier. Every movement had consequences. Every decision echoed across this wing. Finally she spoke. Quiet, precise. We will not move this patient. A young nurse, trembling, asked, but they said we have to. Then we do it together, she said. I take responsibility. You follow my guidance. The team froze, then obeyed, not because she demanded it, but because she made it simple, clear, and morally defensible. She led the preparation with restraint, making adjustments in real time, every action calculated to reduce risk. Minutes later, the patient's vitals were stable. The immediate crisis passed. But the price was clear. One of the junior doctors who had questioned her earlier had been humiliated in front of administration for refusing to follow a protocol that now looked irrelevant. Another nurse had broken down in the supply room, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility she had just shouldered. She felt none of the satisfaction that might come from winning. There was no applause, no acknowledgement, only a tight knot in her stomach, the echo of a choice made under pressure, and the knowledge that someone else had taken the fall for it. Her pager buzzed again. This time instructions for the next phase of containment arrived. She read them, considered them, and deleted the message. She would handle what was in front of her, step by step, patient by patient, life by life. By the end of the hour, the ICU wing had stabilized further. The threat that had once seemed unstoppable was now contained, not solved. She walked slowly to the window overlooking the ambulance bay. Outside, the unmarked vehicles waited. No one acknowledged them. No one would speak of them. She didn't expect recognition. None would come. In the quiet, she allowed herself a single thought. The right choice had been made, but someone would pay the cost anyway. Restraint, competence, and moral clarity. Her authority revealed not by orders shouted, but by the results no one else could achieve. She exhaled, the only sound in the hallway, and returned to her patients. The ICU settled into a tenuous calm. Not silence, never silence, but a rhythm that no one could disrupt. Monitors blinked steadily. Machines hummed with predictable regularity. Staff moved efficiently, each action measured, cautious, almost reverent. She walked the wing slowly, not stopping unless necessary. Every patient she passed was alive. Every life preserved came with a quiet cost. Exhaustion etched on nurses' faces, a doctor's frustration buried beneath professional courtesy, one technician's white knuckles gripping a four-pole a little too tight. In room 14, a patient who had teetered on the edge the previous night lay breathing steadily. She checked the monitor, then stepped back, adjusting nothing else. A nurse nearby noticed, eyes widening briefly in recognition, then she looked away. It was the only acknowledgement that mattered. Down the corridor, the charge nurse approached. "They've de-escalated," she said softly. "Engineering has control again. The alerts have been cleared." She nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "Good," she said. Not triumphant, not relieved, just factual. A senior physician entered the wing, glancing from monitor to staff. He said nothing. He did not need to. The rhythm of the unit, the survival of the patients, the absence of panic. It spoke louder than any words. Outside, the unmarked vehicles had left. Administration was quiet, the threat of oversight suspended without explanation. No announcements were made, no headlines printed. Everything that had occurred existed only in the quiet knowledge of those present. She returned to the central station. A stack of reports waited for her review. Incidents logged, notes from earlier alerts, suggestions from staff. She skimmed them briefly, then set them aside. Nothing required her signature. No one would ask for it. The junior doctor who had challenged her earlier approached tentatively. I don't understand, he admitted. How did you do not make it about me, she interrupted gently. It's about them, the patients, the wing. Not your ego, not mine. He nodded, silent. The lesson, whatever it had been, was already imprinted. She walked to the end of the wing, pausing outside room 16. A patient slept quietly, ventilator cycling with steady rhythm. She adjusted the angle of the bed slightly, just enough for comfort, then stepped back. No one noticed. That was the point. Her pager vibrated once more. She ignored it. The messages no longer mattered. She had done what needed to be done. The consequences, visible, invisible, immediate, lingering, were already unfolding. The ICU staff resumed their rounds. Conversations returned to routine matters, vitals, charts, medication schedules. The extraordinary events of the night became just another shadow in the long record of hospital life. She packed her bags slowly, methodically. Her shift was technically over, but she lingered, ensuring every patient remained stable. No one stopped her. No one acknowledged her presence. No one thanked her. She left the wing the same way she had arrived, quietly, with calm authority, unannounced, uncelebrated, and completely earned. The hospital would continue. The patients would survive. And the secret of who had kept it all together, the competence, the restraint, the authority, remained theirs alone to know. The first light of morning filtered through the hospital windows, soft and pale. The hum of ventilators and monitors continued, but the frantic rhythm of the night had given way to the orderly pace of day shift. Day staff trickled in, rubbing eyes, adjusting ID badges, and scanning patient charts. Conversations were calm, clipped, professional, almost routine. Almost. In the ICU, whispers floated briefly among nurses and doctors. Some exchanged looks that carried questions they could not voice. Had the previous night been a simulation, a miscommunication? Nothing made sense, yet the results were undeniable. The patients had survived. She moved quietly along the hall, observing the shift change. Nurses gave her a brief nod, not a question. Doctors avoided making eye contact, unsure of how to reconcile the events with the official reports. A new resident hurried past, carrying charts. One patient's vitals had spiked just as the resident entered the room. The resident's hands trembled slightly as he prepared an intervention. She stepped close, not touching, not commanding, just guiding. "Observe first," she said softly. "The monitor is behind. Let the patient show you what's happening." He hesitated, then nodded. Relief and disbelief crossed his face as the patient stabilized. At the nurse's station, the charge nurse reviewed logs from the previous night. She glanced at the empty space where the protagonist had been working, then looked around at the staff. No one had left complaints. No one had left praise. Everything was silently documented. The credit was there in the records, buried under procedural language invisible to most. Down the corridor, the administration office opened. Phones rang softly. Clerks shuffled papers. Nothing indicated the crisis that had raged just hours ago. She paused in the hallway near the glass wall overlooking the ambulance bay. Sunlight reflected off the pavement. No vehicles remained. No personnel from outside agencies remained. The hospital, as if nothing had happened, was back to its routine. A nurse approached, quiet, hesitant. "You're leaving?" she asked. "Yes," she replied. "You're going to get recognized for last night, right?" She shook her head gently. "No, that's not the point." The nurse looked away, understanding, but still unsure. She collected her bag, checked the monitors one last time, adjusted the angle of a patient's bed. Nothing dramatic, nothing noticeable, just care. As she walked toward the exit, she passed the staff who had tried to remove her, administrators who had doubted her, and doctors who had questioned her decisions. None acknowledged her. She did not expect them to. The hospital hummed with quiet efficiency. Patients were alive, systems were stable, the wing remained contained. She pushed open the staff door, the same way she had entered days ago. No fanfare, no announcements, no spotlight. Only the calm, heavy weight of what had been done, and the quiet assurance that it had been done well. The morning shift continued inside, unaware of the true cost of survival. Outside, the sun rose higher. She disappeared into the city, unrecognized, uncelebrated, but wholly necessary. The hallway was quiet, almost peaceful, though the residue of the night lingered. The soft beeping of monitors, the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes, and the hum of the HVAC were the only sounds accompanying her steps. No one followed. No one watched. No one announced her presence. She paused briefly outside the ICU. The doors stood closed, secured, as if guarding the events that had unfolded within. She took a measured breath, letting herself observe the room one last time. Patients lay stabilized, their chests rising in slow, steady rhythms. Machines cycled with predictable regularity. Staff moved with calm precision, no hint of panic in their movements. A nurse from the day shift noticed her at the edge of the hallway. Their eyes met for a brief second, an acknowledgement of understanding, not admiration. It was subtle, fleeting, and entirely enough. No words passed between them. Recognition was not required, it existed silently, shared only by those who had witnessed competence under pressure. She adjusted the strap of her bag and began walking toward the exit. Each step was deliberate. She did not rush. There was no triumph in her gait, only the quiet weight of responsibility fulfilled. Passing the administrative offices, she caught glimpses of staff reviewing reports from the previous night. Faces were calm, some thoughtful. Their interpretations would be partial. They would never fully know the orchestration, the choices made, or the restraint exercised to prevent catastrophe, and she did not intend to explain. That knowledge belonged to her alone. At the glass doors leading to the staff exit, sunlight spilled into the corridor. Outside, the city moved unaware. Cars passed, pedestrians crossed intersections, and the world continued without pause. She pushed the doors open and stepped through. For a moment, she paused, letting the brightness settle around her. No applause, no cameras, no praise. Just the quiet acknowledgement of her own work, heavy with the cost and responsibility she had carried. A security officer at the entrance glanced at her, then returned to his station. She nodded once, a small, invisible signal of respect. That was enough. She walked down the street, the city swallowing her presence. Behind her, the hospital continued its life, unaffected on the surface, but subtly altered by the events that had taken place. Lives had been preserved, systems had been stabilized. The crisis was over, contained, and no one outside this wing would ever know how close they had come to disaster, and she would leave it that way. Quiet competence, unseen authority, uncelebrated, but completely earned. The hospital remained in its routine, but a single invisible line had been drawn through the night. Somewhere in its records, in the minds of a few who had noticed, the story existed, but only as a shadow, never fully illuminated. She disappeared into the city, unremarkable, unacknowledged, carrying nothing but the knowledge that she had done exactly what was required. The day continued, life went on, and she was gone. Just another staff member, just another nurse, leaving behind the truth of what one person could quietly hold together.